At Scripture Union, we're so excited to see the way that God is answering our prayers and stirring the hearts of children and young people who are feeling compelled to go into churches, who are wanting to read the Bible, who are having dramatic encounters with Jesus in their dreams. And children as young as the age of 3 are asking their parents to take them to church. We'd love to share how you can be prepared and equipped as church to join in with what God is doing. Be ready for the turner-uppers and reach out to children and young people, because the turner-uppers are just the tip of the iceberg. We'd love to see a new generation encounter Jesus and become disciples, because knowing Jesus changes everything.
Hi, I'm Jenny.
And I'm Matt.
And we work for Scripture Union.
What we really want to do today is to explore how we can be ready as the church to welcome those who are just turning up, whether that's on a Sunday, in a midweek group, or even at any time during the week. We're going to do some top tips for being ready for that. Jenny, any stories, examples that you've heard of these people just turning up?
I mean, I've heard many stories. I think some of my favourites, I don't know if you're allowed to have favourites, but some of my favourites have been where Jesus has appeared to someone in a dream, and they've told the person in the dream to go and find out more, and they've gone to church to ask those questions. And others for children who've heard something at school and they've gone home and asked their parents to take them to church so that as a family they can go on a faith journey together. There's so many different stories that we're going to be picking up on as we look at our different top tips.
So the first thing that we want to think about, first top tip, is prayer. Really, all revivals of Christian history started in the place of prayer, and in a sense are maintained and continued in the place of prayer. And so a really key question, I think, for churches to be asking themselves is what are we doing to pray specifically for this work that God is doing among people across the nation. And that will look different for different churches, the sorts of things they can do. But the first thing we need to be asking ourselves is, are we doing anything at all to really pray into this? Is this something that we're engaging the whole church with? And so it's not just a little group on the side praying for, but it's as many people as can be involved right across all of the ages, and to really expect that God is going to work and move and continue to do that as we continue in prayer.
Yeah, and how exciting is it that prayers are being answered? Like people who faithfully prayed for years for children and young people to come to church, it's happening. And it's all the things that we used to say don't happen. Don't expect them just to turn up at church. But they are turning up at church. These people's prayers are being answered. And so that kind of fresh hope again of expectancy to believe that things are going to happen, to raise our expectation in prayer.
Yeah, and so then a couple perhaps key things for churches to be praying for. And I think first of all, it's to give thanks for what's happening. And so just praise God for the work that he's doing in drawing people in and inviting people in. So to give thanks, to ask God that we might see more of that. There's still plenty of people who are not turning up at churches whenever. So it's wonderful that we're seeing that happen, but there's lots more. And I think particularly to pray for that God would raise up people within the church to consider how they could be involved in responding to this.
Yeah,
so obviously, as well as praying, there's also then things that we might feel called to do, or ways to be involved with engaging with those who are turning up. Any key things that you think?
I think praying for discernment in that as well, for what is the best position for your church. If we're going to reach every child and young person in England and Wales, then every church needs to be playing their part. So for praying for discernment for your church, what does it look like for you to respond in this moment? And also just holding on to hope and not getting disgruntled perhaps that it's happening to other people, but what about where I am? I loved a story from a friend who said that he was feeling a bit disheartened by hearing the stories but not seeing it. And so spend time intentionally praying for children and young people in his area. And the following Sunday, some turned up, just like the stories had been. He had his own story to tell. So having that hope and expectancy and thinking about what does it look like for you, for your church.
It's great. So we want to pray, we want to give thanks, we want to ask to see more, we want to pray for discernment and for ways that God might be calling each of us to get involved and the church as a whole. and then also to involve everyone, all ages, in this praying for what God is doing.
So prayer was our first top tip. The next top tip is safeguarding. Now, safeguarding is an essential thing for all of us to think about. For many churches, we've not come through this before, where we've had children and young people turning up on their own. And it's so exciting that it's happening. And as churches, we need to be ready for it. So we need to think through our safeguarding policies. We need to remember that every child and young person who walks through who's under 18 falls under our duty of care. So we need to think about what does it look like to be ready. And one of the ways we need to think about that is when we think about consent.
Yep. So anyone under 18, if they're turning up, especially on their own, or are going to be coming to something on their own without parents, we do need consent for them to be a part of that. The way that we get that, or the procedure that we go through, can look different in different spaces. There'll be different things to consider. Let's say for a 17-year-old, perhaps who's turned up at a church service on a Sunday on their own, and a 9-year-old who's turned up at a midweek group. That's just something for us to work through, how we get consent. And so perhaps to reflect some of these things by making just a few changes to your policy. Because we're in, for a lot of churches, a unique position. Perhaps this hasn't really been happening before, but it is happening now. We could just try and reflect those. It could be dead easy just to put in a little section in a policy that's about what we're going to do with turner-uppers. And I think as a part of that, then having some training for those who are likely to be the first people to encounter those who are just turning up, let's say like a welcome team on Sunday.
Yeah, so helping the welcome team think through what does it look like to welcome those children and young people well, and within the safeguarding frame, it's going to be them knowing who they're going to pass them on to.
Right.
It could be a bit daunting to go, in you go, but actually if there's a designated adult who is someone that the church knows is DBS checked, is a safe person for that young person or child to be directed to, might be someone they're going to sit with until, if there are groups, they're going to go out to groups, thinking through what that looks like. Thinking through who is the safe people in church. And I guess as well, if you're thinking about that, what does it look like as a church for children and young people to come unaccompanied? Are we actually telling parents that they can drop their kids off to church? Because there are stories of children who are desperate to go to church and the parents don't want to go. So how do we make it possible for them to get there? In some cases, there's stories of neighbours bringing the children or friends bringing their children. But actually, as a church, could we be ready to say, you can drop your child off? Do we have things in place to allow for that? Because if there's children who want to go to church, but the parents won't take them, can they get dropped off? Are church ready to welcome them for that? What does our policy say about how we're going to get consent for those different places? And thinking about the bigger picture of consent, obviously filming comes into that as well now.
Yeah, and where you've mentioned welcome there, we are going to talk a bit about welcome later on. But as for the welcome team, having some training, so as well as sort of just your standard safeguarding training that everyone will have who's involved in this kind of thing, just some very specific things so that they're ready for if people, particularly children and young people, start turning up on their own so they know what to do. So we're almost we don't end up chasing our tails with it and going, oh, I'm not quite sure what to do in this scenario, because we've thought it through beforehand. So there could be just some specific bits you could do in training for those who are going to be or are likely to be the first point of contact for those who are new to the church space. And you mentioned something before to me about having kind of a nominated adult. Do you want to say a bit about that?
Yes. So if you're if you're on the welcome team, actually having people ready for the welcome team to direct people to. So if someone turns up who's under 18 and doesn't have an adult with them, having someone who is a DBS checked adult ready to be that welcoming person. Ideally, if possible, to go and sit them with a family with kids the same age would be the most ideal. But actually, what does it look like to have people ready? I know that when I serve on children and youth team at the church, that sometimes I'm not quite ready early to welcome people because we're still setting up. But what does it look like to say actually that the kids team or the youth team need to be ready so that if anyone does turn up without an adult, that they can go and sit with them in church? And if that's not the case, who are the safe people? Who are the designated adults that you're going to direct them to?
Yeah, and so it feels like the main thing we're saying is that we're in a really exciting time with children and young people turning up, and there are just some dead simple things that we could do to make sure that this is a safe space that they're coming into. And so the main thing is just to have worked through some of those, almost where there's the opportunity before we start seeing this happening, because it really is foreseeable in this time for the church that this is likely to happen.
Absolutely.
Or is already happening, as we've seen in a lot of cases. And so let's just be as ready as we can for it.
Yeah, and it might just be adding an extra bit to your policy that's called the turner-uppers section, where it says, if unaccompanied children and young people come in, this is what we're going to do in each scenario. This is who's going to be the responsible adult in those situations. This is our risk assessment for that, to show that we are ready, we thought it through, we're not going to be caught on the back foot, we're going to be ready in our expectancy for them to turn up.
So top tip number 3, we want to think about welcome. So people they're turning up to a new space. It might be the first time they've ever been near a church building, possibly. They may know no one at all. If it's one of these scenarios where they've just felt compelled to turn up at church, it could be they're turning up on their own or with their family. What is our welcome like for them? How do we make them feel comfortable? That kind of thing. I suppose the first thing that we could think about there is kind of the welcome team. So whether that's a Sunday morning thing, or it might be the person who they would meet turning up at midweek group, are we ready for that as part of a welcome team? One of the things I think is sometimes overlooked with welcome teams is having people of all ages involved in the welcoming thing. I know that's something you feel very strongly about, Jenny.
It's something I love the idea that we don't have almost an age limit on what age children can get involved in serving at church. And I think there's something quite special about, if you've got children in church already, families who are connected in, what does it look like to help those children serve on the welcome team so that they say hello to people just like adults say hello to people. And I think another thing when it comes to welcome is thinking through, for those who are doing the welcome, what is it like to welcome a child specifically? Because sometimes if they do come in with an adult, the welcome goes up here rather than down there. What does it look like to bend down and say hello to a child, to ask them their name, to give them a specific welcome for themselves as well?
Yeah, there's kind of that broad thought about what's the experience like for a child or young person turning up at church. What's their experience of church? Can they see what's going on? Can they access everything?
Yeah.
Or is everything really directed at adults? And so maybe we've got a wonderful welcome for adults, but we haven't quite thought through what it means to welcome children and young people. And really, that's particularly the age range that we're seeing being a big part of this.
Yeah.
Of the turning up at church and really being keen. Stories of really families who are coming to be part of church because of the interest of the children first.
Yeah.
But if that child then turns up to church with their family for the first time and all the attention is given to the adults and nothing for them, well, that's not the ideal scenario, is it?
No.
So I want to think about how can we do that well?
Yeah, and it's something that it's important that we think about as churches as to how visible things are for children in terms of, I heard one church where they put a GoPro camera on an 8-year-old to see how things were from an 8-year-old's height, who said hello to them when they came in, when they went into church, what could they see or not see? Because actually that's then something that as a church family we can think about, suggesting where the best places to sit are. Otherwise, what happened at one point was that everyone stood up and all the child could see was everyone's backs because they couldn't see what was going on behind them or above them. So what does it look like to make sure that children or smaller people even are set on the end of rows or set on positions where they're going to be able to see what's going on? But then also think about welcoming in other ways as well. Actually, what does it look like to be welcoming in terms of, perhaps some churches give out a welcome pack to people that shares a bit about the church. What does it look like to have some children packs ready to go, or young people packs that they get in their hands to say, hey, this is your invitation to things that are going on at church for you. If you do a midweek club or special events, that those things are in that pack. Maybe even a booklet to explain a bit about what the Christian faith is about. Maybe some treats as well. And thinking about that side of thing with refreshments, for many Sunday gatherings for church, they often happen on a Sunday morning. But all children kind of 7 and under during the week at school, around the same time of when church starts, they all get a snack. What does it look like as a church to be snack ready to welcome families, to have snacks that are suitable for younger children? Some parents don't want their kids having sugary biscuits. What does it look like to have breadsticks available or some fruit even available, things like that? I loved a story that a friend told of. They went to church for a first time and their son, who was 5 at the time, got given some gold coins. And they said, you can exchange your gold coins at the children's snack table. And it was just completely set up for the children to go and exchange. They got a drink with one. They got a savoury snack and a sweet snack, or different bits like that, different things they could get. But I love that idea of welcoming being so intentional for children and young people in those spaces.
Yeah, it's really good. One of the things I like to think about is almost the welcome. I'm going to say the welcome beyond the welcome. What I mean is we often think about welcome team on the door, the first greeting.
Yeah.
What's our welcome like beyond the first greeting? So let's say a family has come along to church. They've been welcomed at the door. They've been shown a place to sit. There's then a service. There's then the end of the service. What happens after that? Is anyone going to speak to them? It might be that you have a few people who are particularly gifted or equipped for having those kind of conversations. Or we could equip people with some appropriate and helpful questions.
Yeah.
Just to get a sense of what has brought you to church today. Is this something that you've done before? And so you're already starting to engage with them beyond just the smile and the friendly welcome at the door. And perhaps in a different setting, let's say a midweek group. Perhaps a child comes along to a midweek group and they're then again coming into a new space, and it might be that all the other children have been coming for a while. They know what's going on. They know where to go. So what's it like? A good question to ask. What's it like for that child to be coming into that space for the first
time?
Yeah, we've got a generation of young people being called the anxious generation, and people very nervous about going to new places. Is there something we could do to help facilitate that welcome? Maybe there's the opportunity to record a little video that shows people around the space. That's almost like a pre-welcome,
yes,
I suppose. So people get an idea of this is what it's like to be in the space. Here's where this thing is. Here's where that is. And so it's creating an environment that people are more familiar with and comfortable with, which could just help to overcome some very practical sort of anxiety barriers that people might have for coming to a new space. So you go, okay, that's where the toilets are. This is roughly what's going to happen in the group. Okay, now I can come into that space. The one other thing I'd love to mention is about one-to-one conversations. So again, especially for a child coming to a new group, are they just sort of almost like absorbed into the activity program? Or have we got someone or a couple of leaders who are able to have those conversations, in the one-to-one conversations in the context of a group setting, just to inquire after them, meet them a bit more properly, find out who they are, what's brought them in, and so to start to really welcome them in that way.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Because when you look into the research about what helps make a faith that lasts, often the intergenerational side of things is a really key thing to keep children connected to church. And that is one of the beautiful things about a church family as a whole, is different age groups mixed together. So what does it look like to equip adults to speak to the children is such a special thing. But I also think when it comes to welcome, there's the whole thing about if someone turns up midweek to your church building, is it open? Is it welcoming? And if it's not going to be open, because I appreciate not all buildings are open all the time, is there a sign up to say when it will be open, so that people know when they are allowed to come in and what that looks like?
Okay, let's think a bit about the Bible. There's a growing interest, a fascination in the Bible. Gen Z in particular, but Gen Alpha too, in a lot of instances are becoming disillusioned, if you like, with the state and the offer of the world. They're looking for something. They're turning up at churches because they're looking for truth. And we've got the truth in the Bible. And so perhaps the first question for us to be asking ourselves as a church is, are we giving the truth?
Yes.
Are we teaching it? Are we sharing it? Are we creating opportunities for people to explore it? Have we got Bibles ready to give out? Because the Bible itself tells us that it contains everything that people need. I think it's 2 Timothy. It's everything that people need to come to faith in Jesus Christ. Salvation through faith in Jesus. But the main tool that we've got for leading people in that way is the Bible. And so how are we using it? how are we creating opportunities for people to engage with it? Because there's a real interest in people exploring what it has to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I found it fascinating to see all the reports about Bible sales just rocketing over the last year. Like, more have been sold than ever before. And stories of churches who have thought about this and have got Bibles ready to give away. And thinking through, if you haven't done that or got that, as a church, do you have Bibles to give to someone who comes in? If we believe that this is the word of God, actually, are we ready to put it into the hands of other people? I love the story of a little boy who walked into a church and asked for a Bible, or asked to buy a Bible. And they were like, "Oh, you don't have to buy one, we'll give you one." And then the church were really aware they didn't actually have a children's Bible, and they wanted to give him something that was going to be accessible for him to read. So thinking through what kind of Bibles you have and how accessible they are for people to read, to actually help them to be able to engage with it well, is a really key thing.
We, as a church, we use the CSB translation. One of the things that was part of that decision-making process was a young person who read it for the first time and said, "Finally, a Bible that's in my language." And it was just so for us in that particular instance, that was a helpful translation. It's by no means the only one that's useful, but just thinking those things through. What kind of things have we got to put in hands? Because as well as stories of great interest and fascination in the Bible, there are stories of people who are coming to churches or coming to Christians that they know. Maybe they've got a Bible and they've said, "I've tried to read this and I don't understand it." Oftentimes they've started, as you would with a book. Didn't know any different. They just start at the beginning. And there's certainly something to be said for just starting at the beginning. But as someone who's not grown up in the church, who's never read a Bible before, to just start at the beginning and try to go through with no help or support, you could be quite confused about what's going on. And so that question of what can we do as a church that's more than just giving out Bibles is a really key one to ask. Now, there's a reason why, as a church, we gather together to look at the Bible, whether that's on a Sunday altogether, with small groups in a week. It's because this is best explored together as we support and equip one another for that. So we don't just want to be handing out a Bible and sending off, but saying, what kind of things have we got to help support that?
Yes, and I think that can be seen in different ways. It might be an invitation of someone who's happy to come alongside someone and read the Bible together, almost like a mentoring relationship, to say, "Hey, let's explore what this says together." Or it might be that as a church, you're going to produce some postcards or bookmarks to put inside the Bible with as you read this, here's some questions to ask. To think through, what does it look like to read the Bible well? For the church that I'm part of, they heard about the rising interest in Bibles, so they did a Bible giveaway, shared it on social media. We're going to be giving away Bibles. If you'd like one, they're going to be outside this coffee shop at this time. Come and have one for free. And they made bookmarks to go inside. And on the bookmark, it had, here's some questions you might want to ask. Here's an alpha course we're going to be running you might be interested in. And here's an email address that if you have any questions that you want the answer to, here's someone you can get in touch with to find out more. So thinking through things like that, actually putting a bookmark in a Bible might be a way to do it. And thinking through, what Bibles do you have available? It might be, imagine if you said to everyone in your church, "Hey, we'd love to have some Bibles to give away. Would you like to donate one? Would you like to sponsor a Bible to be put into the hands of a child, young person, adult who's coming through the doors?"
Yeah, people do love to get involved with that kind of thing. A couple of resources, perhaps to mention. There's a booklet, So What Next? Which was put together particularly with young people in mind, those who perhaps new to faith, who'd come to faith. And there's this question of, so what next? And it explores some of those big questions about who am I becoming, who is God? Almost like foundational sorts of stuff. Obviously the Youth Alpha and Alpha courses, Christianity Explored, those sorts of things. And there are resources that go with those. Those kind of things that either can be put into people's hands, or that are good tools for meeting with a group or individually with people to really help them get started with exploring the Bible, because it is such an important and essential thing for them to do, either as a new Christian or as those who are coming to explore faith for the first time.
Yeah. And it might be something that as a church, some haven't really thought about how they're going to explore the Bible with children. And for us as Script Union, that is what some of us do for our job. We can help you as a church to look at opportunities and how you might explore the Bible well with children and young people in your community. Our fifth top tip is about visibility. How visible is your church? Now, for some, that might sound really obvious in terms of you've got a big church building, a bit like the one we're in at the moment, maybe. For others, you might meet in a school. How visible do people know that there's a church in the school? Thinking through those questions about how do people find out about your church? Obviously, one of the key things within that is thinking through your website and your social media, thinking through what do they say. Is it clear from them that people are welcome and they're allowed to come and join in? Sometimes as Christians, we take it for granted to know, oh, I can just turn up at church. If people have never been to church before, and if we're looking at Generation Alpha, the post-Christendom generation where their grandparents didn't even go to church, do they know they're allowed to go? Because for some, the only time they would have been to church is when they've had an invitation to a christening or to a wedding or a funeral. So actually, how do we make it known that people are welcome and to come and be part of things? How do we let it be known when people can come to things as well? I heard a great story of someone who asked ChatGPT about their local church, where can I find out about Jesus? And because the church website had the office hours on it, it kept on saying that lots of the local churches were closed. So actually, how do we make it clear from our website so that when AI and things are finding out about when the church is open, actually, when are people going to be around? When is the building going to be open? What kind of visibility do we have on notice boards and things like that to say when people are allowed and welcome to come and walk in?
Yeah, and the reason why this is particularly important in the current culture is because people are looking to go to a church for the first time. They don't know any of these things. And so let's say they're at home, they felt compelled to go to a church. What are they going to do? They're going to turn to a device probably and just go churches in my town. They're starting from scratch, kind of like you mentioned, they don't know anything at this point. And that's why your websites, your social media, the information that they can get from there is really important. I mean, what if you could just have on your website, somewhere that's easily visible on your website, so just something really simple that says, if you are looking to explore the Christian faith for the first time, come to this church. And so then let's say AI or whatever engines are pulling information from your website, or people are going there themselves, they can go, oh, that's a place for me.
Yep.
And so they don't have to work out. They might be confused about why there's quite a number of churches in my local area. Which one do I go to? Which one is meant to be for me? Just something as simple as that could help to point people in the right direction. The other thing to consider with visibility is not just what your church looks like, but how visible are the members of your church in the community. So particularly if you're engaged with schools, going into schools, whether that's the minister at a church or volunteers or a youth and children's worker, helping the children who they're engaging with in the school to make that connection with, oh, this is where this person is coming from, this is who they're representing. And so as children build a relationship perhaps with those people in the school space, there's then an easy opportunity for that to move to another space, let's say to the church building space, when that's a step that they're ready to take.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting as well when we think about visibility in schools. If you've got families in your church already, how are we equipping parents for sharing faith in schools? How are we equipping parents to know what they can invite people to know when we're doing an event, whether it's something that is going to be seeker-friendly, children-friendly, because there are some things that are quite reflective services and someone does not want to take their kid into that. But then there's other times when, hey, we're having an everyone in and everyone's all singing and dancing and moving services. And sometimes I know that I've spoken to people and they said, oh, I couldn't take my child to church because they won't sit still. Well, I take my children's church and they don't sit still, and I know it's okay, but not everyone outside the church knows that. How do we make things known that actually the welcome's there, that actually you can move? We talked about earlier about making welcome videos to share a bit about what your church might be like. So actually sharing videos of what a service looks like, or what a kids group looks like, or what a toddler group looks like, can be a way that takes away that anxiety of walking into somewhere for the first time.
Yeah, along with that, we're quite good at producing, I think, as the church, concise information, whether that's a little flyer, a little card that just gives key bits of information in the current culture, it could be particularly helpful to have a space where there's more information. It's almost like the FAQ, the frequently asked question section on the website that answers some of those questions. What do I need to wear? Can I come to this? What time does it start? What am I likely to expect? So again, it's just removing some of those barriers for people who've not been into that kind of space or to that kind of group before.
Yeah, that's really good. And also when we think about visibility, like we've thought about how lots of people will use a device now. They'll go and Google what's going on locally. But actually, what about children in our areas? What does it look like to make sure things are visible to children? Too often our notice boards are up high. What does it look like to have notices down low that are child height for them to see? I know that the first church I worked in, we used to have 2 big glass doors at the front, and the advertisement for children's clubs I put on the bottom windows so they were at the height of children, so that children could see as they were walking past what's going on. They're more likely to say to their parent, can I go to that, when they can actually see and know what they're invited to.